You're listening to Bare Necessities, the podcast all about Coventry Bears Rugby League. Coming up on this week's show, the last show of the season, we've got all the analysis and reaction as the Bears ended the season in style with a brilliant 58-16 win at home to the South Wales Ironmen. You'll hear our thoughts as well as those of head coach Tom Tsang. Not only that, we managed to blag front row seats for the Bears end of season awards, so we'll let you know who won what before Craig and I sum up the season and dish out some awards of our own. Here we go. Yes, this is the Bare Necessities podcast, and I'm one of your hosts, Dave Musson. I'm sat here with my co-host, Craig Cathcart, and we are very happy because we have just seen the Bears round off the season with a comprehensive 58-16 victory at home to South Wales Ironmen. Craig, that was a lot better, wasn't it?
That was a lot of fun to watch. We've had a few games this season where we've been biting our nails and been disappointed in the end, but today the Bears were comfortable and everything that we hoped for really for the last game of the season.
So I'll just take you briefly through the story of the game, and it was pretty much one-way traffic. So the Bears scored after a couple of minutes, Bradley Brennan going over from short range after a nice short pass from Billy Gaylor. And then it was Billy Gaylor again setting the position and giving the final pass for the try. He put in a brilliant 40-20 kick, and that led to a very short pass to Brad Brennan again from close range. Both of those tries were converted, so that was 12-0 inside 5 minutes. A couple of minutes later, Jamal Hunt scored again. Came through Billy Gaylor with a little kick out to the edge, and Jamal with an easy finish. Conversion was missed that time, that took it to 16-0. South Wales did hit back. They scored a converted try of their own. An unfortunate error from Mikey Russell. He was running out from the Bears' defensive line, got to about the 20-metre line, went past the defender, forgot to take the ball with him, and South Wales scored and converted. But the Bears, they didn't crumble. Their defence was absolutely resolute in the first half, particularly Alex Beddoes putting in some huge tackles in the first 20 minutes. And it was no surprise that Bears got a few more points on the board before the break. So Hayden Freeman scored an excellent try. He sort of made space for himself just over the halfway line with a little jink and then just went for it and finished. That took it to 26. Then Brad Delaney scored. He did a nice 1-2 with Paul Emanuele and ran in from 30 metres. That was converted to take it to 26-6. Then Matt Reed scored after some great play from Kieran Sherratt. Nice pass, and Matt had an easy run in. Again, conversion was good, 32-6. And this is still all in the first half. Then Jamal scored again. Kick wide. He'd been screaming for it wide. The kick came wide and it didn't quite bounce for him. He let it hit the floor. Picked it up, by which time there were a load of defenders around him. It didn't matter, he just shoved them all out the way and scored. That took it to 36-6, and then right on half-time, Paul Emanuele scored. It was Brad Delaney coming through after a great break from Jack Morrison. Played the ball off to Brad Delaney, he played it inside to Paul, who ran under sticks and put it down and converted his own try, 42-6, and that's just at half-time. Now, the second half was always going to be a bit slower than that from the Bears' point of view. It also didn't help that just before the start of the second half, it absolutely threw it down. So the ball was very greasy. The Bears opened the scoring in the second half. Jamal again scoring, finishing his hat-trick. Nice kick from Brad Delaney. And Jamal just burst through and finished. That was converted as well, 48-6. South Wales did score a couple of tries themselves after that. Just some slack tackling, some unusually slack tackling from the Bears for this game. That brought it back to 48-16. But Bears managed to get a couple more tries on the board to round off the season in great style. First, Mikey Russell scored after a great break from Matt Reed, and Mikey was supporting inside, simple finish. That took it to 52-16, and then right at the end, Chris Barrett scoring, diving on a grubber. Conversion from Paul Emanuele was good. 58-16 final score, a decent crowd here too, and this is what head coach Tom Tsang thought of it all. So Tom, as I've just said, I can finally interview you about a win. I mean, that was clinical in attack, aggressive in defence, loads of tries scored. You must be thrilled as a way to round off the season.
Yeah, absolutely. We've obviously saved the best till last there, and funnily, we've been saying at some point it'll click. Unfortunately, it was the last game of the year when it actually did, but I think that's just a taste of what we could have been if different things had fallen differently. I mean, throughout the year, you point to there's 4 or 5 results that we've lost, and by 2 points or less than a try. A different day, those games might have gone a different way, and you're looking at the end of the season a lot differently, and the position in the season a lot differently. But today was all about the guys having fun, showing what they were all about, and finishing on as high a high as they could do, and it obviously went well for them. So very happy for the lads, and very happy for the way that we finished. The trick now is to try and keep as many of the guys as we can do going into next year, and then we can have some consistency, which we didn't really have this year, and hopefully better things to come.
And you really flew out the traps from the start of the game today. Was that part of the game plan to really hit South Wales sort of straight up right in those first 10 minutes?
Yeah, the game plan was really simple. It was right back to basics. Keep it really simple. Work the middle of the field, and just be dominant, be aggressive, play flat, play fast, and get over the top of them as early as we can. We didn't want to move the ball too much. We just wanted it to be really physical. We knew that it was probably as big a pack as we put out all year, so we just needed to keep hold of the ball and get over the top of them through the middle, and that's what we did, and that paid dividends.
And the season's in the bag now. I know it's just finished, so you probably haven't had too much time to reflect on it, but what are your thoughts looking back on this year for the Bears? Is it how would you rate it as a season?
Well, it's been disappointing over the most part, but like I said, you can point to 4 or 5 games which the results could have gone very easily differently, which would have put a completely different slant on the end of the season, and would have put us probably in the Shield final. There's 5 games I can think of off the top of my head where we've lost by less than a try. So different result there, which could have happened, and like I say, you're looking at the season in much different eyes. But the main thing is learning from these lessons, being really, really honest with ourselves with what we did right, what we did wrong. I've got a whole list of things that I know I need to do differently, and that the group need to be better on. But also there's a lot of things that we can keep and move forward with. So it's just a case of learning and improving. It's only the end of our 3rd season, and the teams in our division, that some of them are 100 years old, that have had a lot longer than we have to prepare for this season in particular. So we'll take the positives where they can. We'll be honest where we need to be, and move forward with that.
Tom, it's been a pleasure having you on the podcast this year. Thanks so much for all your post-match interviews, and look forward to next year.
No, thank you so much for the work you do. Really appreciate it. Cheers, mate.
Cheers, man.
Okay, so those are the final thoughts of the season from Tom Tsang, and I think we should say a massive thank you to Tom for. It's easy for him to talk to us on days like this when everything's gone right, but he's not been shy in talking to us when it's not gone so well for the Bears. So I think both Craig and I would like to express a big gratitude to Tom for all his time that he's given this podcast.
Yeah, I think Tom's had a few difficult interviews to do, and he's always stuck to the task, and he's been honest about performances, and he's been really good with us in the first year that we've had the podcast running. So thank you again to Tom.
So let's talk about that game. I mean, the Bears were clinical in attack. They were aggressive in defence. They pretty much played for the full 80 minutes as well. It was kind of brilliant to see a performance, but I guess a little bit disappointing that we've had to wait until the final game of the season. But I don't want to take anything away from the players. That was a superb way to go into the off-season, and hopefully something to build on for the start of next year.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to do a last game of the season, this is how you want it to turn out. I mean, I had every confidence the Bears were going to win today, but what we really didn't want is South Wales coming out and getting a couple of early scores and maybe getting their tails up and thinking they were going to get something out of the game. The Bears really just tore into them right from the off. I mean, they just basically put a marker down and said, you're not going to win today. And actually the South Wales heads dropped within about 15 minutes of the start of the game. So the Bears were in control throughout. They played some wonderful rugby. The 2 guys in the middle, Brad and Paul Emanuele, combined brilliantly throughout. But there was some really good performances. Brad Brennan obviously early on. Billy Gaylor as well set up the first 3 tries, I think. So had a really great start to the game. Also Alex Beddoes, I mean, he looked completely fired up for this, as did a lot of the other players. I mean, it was one where the players came out and thought, you know what, we're not gonna we've had a few performances this season where we've been disappointed, and we're not going to be disappointed on the last day of the season, and they didn't. And I mean, the fans, there was a big crowd here today. The fans absolutely loved it. They were running in tries for fun. Conceded a couple of soft tries, but you can't really blame them for that. I mean, it was they were well in control of the game, and sometimes these things happen whenever you're so far in front. But I think it's a performance which shows what the team here are capable of, and I hope we can hold on to a few of these players and see them back here next year. And I've got every confidence that next season's going to be a good one.
Do you have a favourite try from today? I know there are a lot to choose from, but was there any that stood out for you? I know we mention him a lot on this podcast, but I thought the way Hayden Freeman made space for himself and then just ran in from almost halfway, I thought that was impressive. And the passing for Paul Emanuele's try as well, just before half time, was quite sumptuous as well. Were there any that stood out for you?
Yeah, I think the one where Brad and Paul Emanuele passed backwards and forward amongst each other, that was really good. As you said, the Hayden Freeman one. I quite liked the Jamal Hunt one where he dived on the ball because he didn't look like he was going to get to it, but he such a massive burst of pace and then just dived on it before it went dead. It was a really brilliant try, well set up as well.
And I feel like we can almost pitch ourselves as I don't want to say visionaries, but like we talked in the last episode about players who we perhaps hadn't mentioned on the podcast before. Billy Gaylor's name came up. I think we mentioned Alex Beddoes as well, and particularly the first half. Those two guys, if there were two players on the Bears team who was setting the tempo in attack and defence, it was those two. And it just goes to show that there is strength and depth in this team, and if this squad can stay together, there's a feeling like they could get off to a much better start next season and really build something.
Absolutely. I mean, across the whole of the Bears squad, there is some cracking players who just need to believe in themselves, and they need to just put those performances in, week out, and catch the eye of everyone here. But the fans completely appreciated what they did today. As I said, you could really tell there was some Bears players that were really fired up. I mean, that first 10 minutes from Brad Brennan was superb. And you mentioned Alex Beddoes. I mean, again, he was so fired up early on in the game, and and Billy as well put in some fantastic work early on in the game. The game was over within 20 minutes, which was just superb. So,
well, as you can probably hear in the background, the heavens have opened once again. So, what we're going to do, we don't have any Ask Mr. C questions. It's the final episode of the season, so that's not too much of a problem. If you do have questions for Mr. C that you want to ask next season, of course, tweet them using the hashtag #AskMrC to @CovBearsPodcast. But as soon as the players are done getting changed after the game, where we're currently waiting for, there's going to be a little end of season awards presentation. So we're going to check out what goes on there and see if we can talk to any of the winners. And then we'll be back at you at the end of the episode for just a quick roundup of how we think the season's gone, and maybe pick out some of our own players of the season.
Okay, well, I did try and get a nice, usable recording from the awards ceremony, but it was all a bit raucous, so you're going to have to make do with something of a mixture. So first of all, let me tell you what awards were handed out. There were awards for Attacking Player of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year, Coaches Player of the Year, Most Improved Player of the Year, Players Player of the Year, Supporters Player of the Year, Young Player of the Year, Young Volunteer of the Year, Volunteer of the Year, and Outstanding Contribution to the Club. Now, for most categories, there were a few nominees, but only one winner for each. So I'll go through who won what and play some of the winners' speeches from those who were brave enough to give a speech anyway. So the Attacking Player of the Year went to Brad Delaney, while the Defensive Player of the Year went to Kieran Sherratt, who had this to say.
This is my first season in Coventry. I just want to say thank you to everyone for making me feel so welcome. Thanks for all the supporters and sponsors. Free haircuts, they're great. Just thanks to everyone. It's been a really good year. I'm not tripping. We said that. Just thanks a lot.
Up next was Coaches Player of the Year, which was won by Mikey Russell, who also made a quick speech.
For the support, and obviously my first year here, and You know, the season is what it is, but I think with the boys around and stuff and the coaching staff, I'm really privileged to be taking this award. So, thanks, guys.
Next up was the Most Improved Player of the Year, which went to Alex Beddoes, before the Players Player of the Year went to Chris Barrett, but neither of them could be tempted into a quick speech, so nothing to play you there. Next, though, it was the Supporters Player of the Year. Now, this is an award with a very special meaning behind it, which was very handily explained on the night by Martin Malone, who you may recognise from a previous Raw on this very podcast. But here's Martin explaining the Supporters Player of the Year award.
Yeah, okay, just a quick word. I've said this a few times. Most years, I have to say it again. Some people in the room who have no idea who Dick Griffiths was. It's just a name. Dick was actually one of the biggest fans the Bears ever had. Went to every game, home and away pretty much, right in the early days. And he was still going to games when he was really desperately ill right at the end of his life. He died 6 years ago, I think now. The award is given like in his memory, so it's just named after him, which is a nice thing. But we'd like to try and give it to a player who played the way he liked the game played. He was old school, play hard, play fair, whatever. But put the Bears shirt on, go out there and do your best. If you come second, tough. If you don't, that's fine. He was happy with that. So we try and give it to a player who played the way that he liked the game.
And that player was Mikey Russell. Next up was Young Player of the Year, which went to Billy Gaylor, and he did give us a brief speech.
Not a great deal to say. It's been a long season. We've dug it out, and it's come to a bit of an end. But cheers for awarding that, and good luck to next year.
Then it was on to the awards that recognise the many volunteers who helped keep the Bears ticking throughout the year. CEO Alan Robinson had a couple of words before handing out those awards.
Just to commend all our volunteers, there's just too many people to mention really. We've thanked a lot of people in today's programme, but you know there's that many people involved that support the club and help the club and give their time up for the club. It really is invaluable. And, you know, we really are indebted to you for all the time that you give us.
And then it was on to the awards. Young Volunteer of the Year went to Callum Manley, while as for Volunteer of the Year, well, I'll hang back to Alan.
This is a tough one because there's just so many people that do so much for us. But this man is, he's been involved in rugby league for over 20, well, probably 20, 30 years in the Midlands. He got involved with us this year. He's just been absolutely unbelievable. He writes match reports every week, to the dot, every time it's needed. It's on the website, it's on social media. It's massive for the club what he does, and I really hope he stays involved with the club next year. Volunteer of the Years. It's Mike Hyde.
And I'm also going to hand back to Alan for details about the last formal award to be handed out, Outstanding Contribution to the Club.
The best way to describe this is being a club man, somebody that has got the club at heart, works his ass off, is an absolute legend when it comes to putting himself forward in the team, and off the field, on the field. You know, ask this guy to do anything, he'll do it. You know, you ask him to be somewhere, he'll be there. Special mention has to go to this guy for how he conducted himself throughout when we went to Toronto. He didn't actually go to Toronto, but the way he conducted himself throughout that, the fact that he couldn't go, was, I don't think I could have dealt with it in the same way. The outstanding contribution for the club for this year as a player goes to John Aldred.
And that wasn't quite it, as we handed over to Matt Reid for one final special presentation, this time something from the players to somebody else.
Just before we do the Alternatives Awards, this is just a little present from all the boys, just for someone who works hard week in, week out, does absolutely everything for the club. He'll do anything for any of the lads, and we all appreciate him. And there's a personal highlight of mine was a Workington game, not long after he'd not been very well, kicking off with all the players behind the sticks from Workington, offering them all out for a fight. Great top.
That is probably the best thing I've ever received. I love these guys. I meet new players every year, and if they've got a Bears shirt on them, I love them. But thank you, lads. That is so
And that was the Coventry Bears Awards 2017.
Okay, well, we couldn't sign off for the season without one final word from the two of us. So, Craig, we sit here, we've seen a season put to bed, and ultimately the Bears have finished on a high, and the Shield campaign has been pretty decent in parts.
Yeah.
Finished 6th overall in the Shield. What do you make of Bears' 2017 season?
I think today sort of shows a little bit of what might have been. There's some really talented players in the Bears squad. They've put in some, great performances this year and not maybe got the rewards that they deserved. There's also been, we've said before, 20-minute periods where the Bears have played some of the best rugby that I've ever seen played by a Bears team. They just haven't been maybe as consistent as they would have liked. They've really competed against some of the top teams in the division for periods of time and not seen it through to the end. There's been a few games where they should have won. I don't think it's a backward step this season. I think it's been, they've maybe not built on the successes they had on the pitch last season, but you've got to look at an overall picture. They've got a lot of young players. They've got experience this year. They've made massive strides off the pitch to with the Bears Fives and the academy setup that they've got now. So there's been really good stuff this year, and they'll have learned an awful lot from it. I know that and also they've got one of the best young coaches in the whole league. Tom has done a fantastic job with the group of players that he's got, and I have every faith that next year will be a very good season for the Bears. Hopefully they can hold on to most of this squad and bring in one or two additions that will add to it. But today was a fantastic day. I mean, there was a decent crowd here. There was a lot of people in the hospitality area, and there's every hope that the Bears will build on this year and have a really good season next year.
And we've just seen the end of year awards handed out. Thought it might be fun to end this final episode of the season with us giving out our own award, each of us, for our personal player of the season for the Bears. So without thinking too much, I want you to just give a name. My one, I'm going to give my one to Matt Reed, purely because he makes ground every time he gets the ball and he's looked immense in attack and defence. Who would your player of the season be?
I wouldn't argue with Matt, but for me it's Mikey Russell. It's his first year in League One. He's come over from Ireland. He's done so much work off the field as well, in the community work. But, as I said, this is a guy that's come over from Ireland, never played in League One, and he's been just a revelation. When he played on the wing, he scored tons of tries, and he's done a brilliant job at fullback as well in the latter half of the season. I think this is a guy that's really going to light up the league next year.
Well, Craig, thank you. It's been a pleasure doing this podcast with you. Thank you for your time this season. Looking forward to next year already, I think.
Yeah, Dave. It's been absolutely fantastic. We've only been doing it for a few weeks, but I've really enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to next year.
And most of all, thank you to all of you guys for listening and for the support. Whether you've listened once, whether you've listened every week, whether you've retweeted us, whether you've entered our competition or anything, it's been brilliant having your support. Thank you so much to the club as well. And yeah, we're not quite sure how many times you'll hear from us in the off season, but you'll definitely hear from us next season. And there's a rumble of thunder, just to make it even more ominous. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Bare Necessities is a podcast about the Coventry Bears. It's an independent show, but it wouldn't be possible without the support and the encouragement of the club. So huge thanks to everyone at the Bears for helping us out. Come and say hi to us on Twitter, where we're at CovBearsPodcast. Tweet Craig your questions using hashtag AskMrC and let us know if you want to have your roar heard. Don't forget to subscribe to the show in Apple Podcasts, Stitcher or wherever else. And if you like the show, leave us a rating or review and spread the word to anyone else who loves the Bears. Bare Betting Necessities is brought to you by me, Dave Musson, and Craig Cathcart, and our theme music is by my band Wave. See you next time.